We are, guys. We are live. I'm so excited, and I'm excited to be here. AR, VR, and EDU live. This is pretty stinking awesome. I'm so excited because one is we got our awesome panel here, and I'll say from the get-go, Rochelle has been here. She's probably missed, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 chats, seriously. And that includes deathly, can't get out of bed. She has made it to these AR, VR, and EDU chats in Twitter for the past almost 2 years now. So I cannot imagine Rochelle not being a part of this. So glad to have her here tonight. And then we have Kim joining us as well. And Kim has been kind of like this AR, VR friend along this journey that we connect at TCEA and now other events, and have had a chance to just in our enthusiasm for this technology, have a chance to really collaborate. And now having her part of this AR, VR, and EDU community is just awesome. Love it. And then we have the incredible Jeremy, and Jeremy's joining us in representing Merge. We're so excited. I just want to give a huge shout out to Merge for sponsoring this. I'm not going to call it a webinar because that's, but I'll call it a live event. So I'm so glad to have Jeremy here, but I want to give you guys a chance to kind of introduce yourselves a little bit, and then we're going to go right into this back to school. What does it mean to bring in AR, VR, getting you started? And Rochelle, if you want to go ahead and kick us off, and then we'll go to Kim, and then Jeremy, if you guys just want to share a little bit about who you are and what you do.
All right, so my name is Rochelle Benet-Poth, and I do enjoy the weekly chats with AR, VR, and EDU because I've been teaching for 22 years at my school, and I've taught French and Spanish, but the last 3 years I've been teaching STEAM, and the last 2 years of that have involved teaching a lot of emerging technologies. And so a big portion of what we do is talk about AR and VR. And I'm always looking for ways to learn, especially to keep up with everything. And so I love joining in to the chats every week and looking at the resources, and definitely things like this where you get to talk with other educators and share ideas, because it just benefits the students so much to have those connections. So glad to be here. So thank you.
Thank you so much for joining in. All right, Kim.
Awesome. My name's Kim Murphy, and I'm an educational technology trainer in Mansfield, Texas. Like Jamie said before, I met Jamie, gosh, I think it's probably been 5 years ago, kind of when this was first starting out, and having a Google Cardboard was the best thing in the world. I have just a passion for AR, VR, and to watch how much it's grown and just how accessible it is and how ingrained it is into society. When I go and I share AR, VR with people and I say, Snapchat is AR, and people are like, what is this? So I just really enjoy the community of AR, VR, and EDU. I enjoy sharing this out with teachers and seeing their eyes light up. And then when they invite me into their classrooms and I get to put this in front of kids, there's nothing better than that light up moment. So it's just been a passion of mine, and I've been lucky enough to be a part of this community and be friends with Jamie, which has been nice to be able to bend her ear and get ideas and bounce ideas off of her. So that's kind of where I'm coming from, and I'm super excited that Merge is sponsoring this live chat because I out at a class today with some Merge cubes. So it's really exciting.
That is awesome. Kim and I will have these backdoor discussions, about AR, VR stuff, and okay, what if, let's see what's out there. It's just so passionate. And I just love being able to connect with people like you in the community, Kim. And when you joined in with the community, it was oh my gosh, we've been missing her. We need her. So excited to have you here. Thank you again. And Jeremy, are you ready to share out what you're all about?
Yeah, sure. Maybe not everything. I'll give you as much as I can in a minute or so. My name is Jeremy Kaniski. I'm with Merge, and I do a lot of different things at Merge, but one of the things that I do, I think that's relevant tonight, is I run all of our internal software development teams. So a lot of the efforts into new applications that you see in the Facebook group and stuff like that is me and my team sort of building that stuff out. And then I also handle a lot of the external development relations and stuff too. And so a lot of the other apps that are available that Merge didn't build, I'm communicating with those developers and helping them build those applications too. I have a long background, I guess this is also relevant. I have a long background in AR and VR. And so probably got started about 8 or 9 years ago building augmented reality applications for informal learning environments. So not quite the classroom, but I was doing work in museums and zoos and aquariums and stuff like that, and building AR for those kinds of spaces. And so now at Merge, we're doing quite a bit of stuff into the classroom recently. And so hopefully I can offer some cool insights. And as you guys are coming up with, wouldn't it be cool if, hopefully I can give you some insight into if it's possible or not, or where the state of that technology is and when it will be possible.
Oh my gosh. Well, we've needed a Jeremy around for a long time because we have a lot of what ifs. And if any of that came true, which it does, we throw out these what ifs to Merge all the time. And they're like, by the way, we do have it. It's like, whoa, okay, what if I remember my first conversation with Merge, and I'm going to tell you, was about their headset, their viewer, their goggles. And so I was super critical. I was like, does it have, is it sanitizable? Can I, yeah. Oh, okay. Is there exposed camera for AR? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, oh, well, can I have a selection tool on? Yeah. Both sides, right or left-handed. I'm like, oh my gosh. And they're like, by the way, we have an, adjustable lens on there. We have straps and openings for directional sound for your audio. And we have strap for your head if you want it. It was like, oh, okay. Yeah, you guys are awesome. So that was my first experience with Merge, and then moving over to the Merge Cube, that's like blown all of our minds. So very cool. Thank you so much, Jeremy, for joining in. And Rochelle, I already see you muted it there in the background, and she's like, oh, my camera doesn't work. And we're like, yeah, we're not buying that one.
For real, it does not work. I kid you not. I cannot figure out how to fix it.
Oh my gosh, I'm just kidding, Rochelle. Mine might go out too. So, all right. So the first question is the fears educators face to get started with AR, VR, and EDU. I think when we're talking about this technology, if you're passionate, you've been following it for a long time, I think one of the questions that people, I think especially those of us that share it with educators, right? It's like that fear of the unknown. It sounds super techy. So what are some of the things that you run across when you're sharing this kind of technology with teachers? What kind of fears are they encountering when they're jumping into AR, VR? And anybody feel free to jump in.
I'll go first.
All right.
How about that? Since my camera is not working. Which really, it's not, which is kind of scary but it ties into the answer to this. Like, it's the technology and the access and having the right resources available. I've done some presentations, some of them which have been with you, Jamie, and more recently back in June. And a lot of the teachers, one of the things is just not knowing where to begin because there's so many things out there. And worrying understandably about the content that's in it. Is it appropriate for different age groups? Is it just a fad? Some of them will say, well, maybe it'll just pass. Like, what's the tie-in? What's the value for it for learning? Like, what does it do differently that I can't do that I'm already doing? But I think the biggest part is, one, knowing where to begin, and that comfort level. Even though we're the teachers, like, we don't know everything, and I don't even know that we're expected to know everything. Things are constantly changing. But part of those fears can be kind of pushed aside by like connecting with other educators or making the connections like with Merge and seeing, how can we support one another? And it doesn't always have to be that every student has access to a device. You can find workarounds. So maybe your classroom only has 4 devices. There's other activities that you can do to kind of like make it more accessible for all students. So at least in my experience, those have been like the top questions people have asked, like, where do I start? How do I get this? What is the most cost-effective way to go about getting some of those? Because they think that the best things are the most expensive things, and that's not necessarily true.
That's absolutely right. And I love what I think one of the things that you've said in the past that I just absolutely love is that, I'm not going to know all these answers. This is not something that I have a full grip on every little aspect, everything that can go wrong. It's that I'm learning with my students, and this is a partnership with them and letting them be a part of that. And I think that's not just empowering for our kids, but it's liberating for our educators, because they don't feel like they have to know everything, and they know things are going to go wrong. That's all right. I got the best tech geniuses here in my classroom. Let them be part of that journey with you. And you do that so well. I love that about how you teach, Rochelle. And I think that's really, that's fantastic. I think that could be an example to so many educators.
Thank you.
For me, when I bring it in there, their first thing is, oh, this is going to be really hard. Like, this is going to be too much for me. This is, virtual reality is only for computer people. And, that I have to have a headset on my face to do anything. And I think that it's one of those things that you have to come in with. It's okay. It's a low anxiety activity. You can do this. And a lot of times it's just some reassurance. It's some modeling. It's, bringing in a tool that is tailor-made for whatever their content is on that day, so that they can feel like they can jump right in and it's, relevant to them. So for the most part, most of the time it's an anxiety of, it just has to be too hard. Virtual and augmented reality, that sounds like that's for techie people and not necessarily for me or my classroom.
Mm-hmm. And I think this is probably a good question for you, Jeremy, because you're going out and you're obviously an advocate of using augmented and virtual reality with educators. Like, what are some of the kickbacks that you guys typically see and some of the fears that they face?
Yeah, I think, a lot of what Rochelle and Kim have mentioned are what we're hearing too. I haven't been in Kim's position, for example, where I'm taking it to the teacher in her classroom in that moment and sort of trying to explain to her how something works. But I think, one of the things we try to do, I do a lot of speaking for Merge too, and some of the kind of delivered the good news at a lot of conferences and things. And I was just recently up in Boston giving a talk, and one of the things that I think we try to do at Merge is take all of these really high-end technologies like augmented reality and sort of make them really accessible and easy to use. So there's 2 points to that, right? It's like really cheap and accessible. The cube's $15. A lot of you got it for $1. But it's also making that tech really easy and understandable, where anyone can really jump in and naturally use it. This concept of like human-centered design and designing these interfaces and these applications around us as humans and making them easy for us to use is really important to us. And so hopefully as people start to realize that, and there's a lot of other good companies doing this too. And so hopefully as people start to realize that technology isn't scary in that way, then those fears will slowly go away. And I'm sure they will.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think some of the things that are there could be something that's not real. It's just that unknown. But I think taking that step forward is really changing the shift of your mindset. And so I think we're learning that little by little, our educators are definitely moving towards that growth mindset and ready to take the risks and maybe not having all those knowns there. But we're finding that, throughout time that is adjusting, but that's been a process, and knowing you have people like Kim to help support you in that journey is so important. I feel like ARVR and EDU is that community to support one another. When you're going through something and you did something great, we had people today on our Voxer group that were mentioning, great things that they were showing and giving ideas. And then we had people that were like, hey, why can't I get this right? What's wrong with this? So, having a community of people, I think, is super important. And I think it's really up to those instructional technologists to advise their educators that there's a place for them to get support, whether that be through them or through resources or whatnot. So I love that you guys gave out the curriculum guide for the Merge Cubes. I put out the K5 today, but it was just like really cool to see those pieces coming together, because I think it's really empowering to our educators to say, okay, then I can prove that this is legit, so
right.
Really
right.
Cool. Okay. The next thing we're looking at is, getting into doing this. Like, how do you plan this jump? Like, what is that first step of saying, yes, I'm ready to give this a shot? Is it getting the right tools, which, I think many of us would say maybe, it depends on what they're looking to get out of it, or is it really like, having the support or finding, getting the collaboration. So I'd love to hear you guys kind of share your thoughts on what is that plan to get started? What was the plan for you? Like, even if you had fails, like, let us know what your thoughts are on that.
Well, for me, I started small. I started small and, I had like, well, for example, with merge. So I had like 5 merge cubes and I started small and I was like, okay, I'm going to go to my K4 science teachers and I'm going to get in on one of their PBLs or one of their department meetings. And I'm just going to demo and see what do you guys think? So I started small, kind of figure out the systems, figure out where this is going to fit in, who's going to be my, go out and speak to the rest of the group, because, it's one of those things, if you can get a few key people, talking about it, then it's going to spread. So it's kind of start small, figure out the systems. How's this going to work? How's this going to go in? And then just, it slowly goes out. It's like anything, when you're trying to pick a device or you're trying to pick an app or you're trying to pick anything, you have to, start where you want to go. What's the goal? What am I trying to do? So I want to get this in the hands of kids. I want to get this integrated into the curriculum. So I've got to start somewhere. So let's look for who's going to buy in, who's going to, have time to sit and talk, or who, would benefit the most from it. But starting small, figuring out the systems, and then just kind of going from there is also a good way not to overwhelm yourself. Because if you start thinking like, oh, I have, 2,000 kids that I've got to get this in the hands of, that's going to be overwhelming for you. It's going to be overwhelming for as a classroom teacher. It's just, so I would say just start small with, what's your one thing, what's your goal, and kind of go from there. That's my opinion. I'm sure there's a million other ways to do it, but that's worked for me.
Yeah, and I'm going to pause right there because we actually have some folks kind of joining us on Twitter and on YouTube that are adding their input as well. So I hope you guys don't mind. I just want to say that we have Michael Drezick that said aloha, or excuse me, Michael Furcano, aloha. Like,
Aloha.
thanks for rubbing that in. You're in a beautiful place. Hopefully everybody's safe, and I'm glad to see that that he's here joining us tonight. Michael Drezick is joining in as well. Thanks for sharing tonight. We have folks responding on YouTube, which is great, but that goes away. I'd love to see you guys also responding on Twitter, which I see here. Couple things. We have David Lockett that has joined in, and he said that he's loving all the accessibility that AR/VR and EDU offers. How can I better explain to students how AR and VR could be used in the workplace? And I think that is, oh man, that in itself is like its own episode, right? So David, if we can connect about having you join us for a panel on that topic, I think that is huge, and certainly one of those questions we always get with every subject. Why do I need to learn this? What is the point of this? So for sure. And then we also have Michael Drezick joining in. One thought is that we can get a crowdfunding campaign going to get Rochelle a working camera. Rochelle, looks like we have some support out there for you. And hopefully her MacBook will adjust and modify accordingly. All right, I'm going to give it back to you guys, Jeremy and Rochelle, thinking about, getting started, like jumping into AR, VR and EDU. What have you also found?
Jamie, I was just going to say, I'll answer that. I was just going to say one thing about what David Lockett posted on Twitter. Yeah. The truth is, and I've heard a lot of teachers say this too, and I know it to be true, is like a lot of the jobs that the students today that they're teaching are going to have don't even exist right now. And so the idea, and so that's why we think, introducing AR and VR to kids now in elementary school, middle school, junior high, whatever, is so important, because those are the mediums in which they're going to be conducting or experiencing the world when they're adults in the workplace. And that's how they're going to be doing their jobs, wearing these augmented reality glasses that do all kinds of crazy things. And so that's why we think incorporating it into EDU is so important, because it will be incorporated so much into the workplace as well. But I agree, we could go on a whole nother Facebook Live with that, or excuse me, ARVRinEDU Live with that.
We're gonna have to write that down, Jeremy, for future. I think that's a really good one.
Yeah, but I'll pass it back to Rochelle to answer.
Yeah.
Oh
Rochelle.
boy. Well, I did answer Michael about the camera on, yeah, because I can't figure it out. And it's kind of scary, this whole tech thing, because it goes back to June with the experience I had. And I think that is happening again, which is a good lesson to learn, because it's not always about the tech, and tech fails. So you always have to have that backup plan. But I completely agree with what Kim had said is, there are so many things out there, and it can be overwhelming, and you don't want to necessarily, you could totally just dive in and try everything at once. And that can work. And I've done that in some of my classes where I have different students working on different things. It's like going to a conference and walking through the poster sessions or the playgrounds. Like, you totally can take in so much information so quickly. Or for people who maybe don't necessarily feel like jumping in so quickly, focusing on one area. Like, I'll often say, what's one thing that you're doing in your classroom that maybe takes up a lot of your time, or that you find, you're taking tons of papers and projects and things home and you're just never getting them done. The students aren't getting the feedback. Focusing on one area that you think could make such a difference for, your students primarily, but also for you. Or maybe when it comes to AR/VR, what is content that you teach? For me as a foreign language teacher, like, the game changer for me came a couple of years ago, because I was having students read about this trip. It was a fake trip of teachers who went to South America. And so I was supplementing with pictures and videos and things like that, but it wasn't the same as actually going there. Now, obviously I cannot fund to take 14 students to South America. And so seeing the videos is nice, but whenever we started to use, like back then at the time was Nearpod, to just have them, hold it up and look around to see what was there. And now, as it's progressed so much with all these different tools, being able to, hold the things in their hand, like flash forward to now with this STEAM class, when I took the Merge Cubes in, I had only put one app and I was kind of just trying it out on my own, but I just let the students kind of do it. And half of them, I had no idea what the things did on there. And they like so quick. I was almost embarrassed to say like how long it took me to figure some things out. But just learning from them, and, just like learning by doing, at least for student part. And then as the educator, it's great for us to see what the students come up with, because they can start to use things and see different uses for things that like we may never come up with. So you have, I guess my answer is both. It depends on your comfort level. I think initially, if you're not totally familiar with it and don't know where to begin, talk to somebody and then just pick one tool and like try that. And if it doesn't really work out as well for your class and your students are kind of like, it's not changing anything, plenty more out there to try something different. And sometimes it's even just, you just have to make one small change to what it is that you're doing. Instead of telling the students what to do, say, hey, here's what this does. What can you create with it? Yeah.
Well, there's so much in that, some of the conversations that I have with people, I think it's more that you're enlightening them on what's out there, what it really is. And then two, helping them to feel empowered to take risks. And, there's so much to all of that and that process. But ultimately, it's just, definitely taking that first step and getting going. That's some good stuff. I'm going to tell you that right now we also have Linda joining us from Canada. We have Allison joining us as well, saying howdy. Allison, you must be down south. Yep, Texas girl. There we go. So we have some responses here, and we have Irby joining in right now, and he is presenting at Q Nevada, and he'll be sharing AR/VR, which is awesome. And so we have some great folks, and feel free, guys, as you're watching, we want to hear your responses too. So I'm going to move into that next part real quick. Good versus bad. So why don't you just quickly share one good thing that you've seen implemented and one terrible thing implemented. So real quick story. I think that will be, that in itself should be an enlightenment on what kind of implementation we've seen in the past.
Well,
Kim, I know you have one.
I'm trying to change the names to protect the innocent.
Jamie did this.
Well, I think the bad is definitely when it's not connected to the content whatsoever. So it really doesn't matter. Like I've gone into, social study or, like a world history class, or, let's like studying ancient times, and they're doing a VR on the Galapagos Islands because it was cool, and it's, yes, it is cool. Are the kids learning something? Probably. Is it an immersive experience? Yes. However, it's not connected to the content. And so I think for me, when you're talking about good implementation versus bad implementation, with AR or VR, the cool is there. You don't have to work for that.
Right.
The cool's there. But you've got to work to connect it to the content, which, seems like it, yeah, that's a lot of work, but that's what teachers are. They're content area experts. So it lets them kind of not have to work so hard to hook a kid in, to get a kid interested, excited, or want to participate. It lets them just focus on making that content connection. So for me, like, that's where I've been, like I walk in and I'm like, yep, you're doing it. But it might not be, connected to the content. And good implementation, we've had where, we've had the best thing ever. We've had like budget cutbacks and kids can't go down to the Alamo. So we can now bring the Alamo to them, and so we've, there's just so many things that you can bring in to students for different reasons in different ways. But the most important thing is to remember that, yeah, you don't have to work for the wow, but it still needs to be connected to the content.
Yep. All right. I got to pause us because we're getting some incredible responses. Lots of folks joining in now. And we have Irby that's sharing what he is doing and where his ideas have come from, including steampunk. So excited to see those awesome things, as well as, of course, kind of going back to ed camps. Very cool, Irby. And then we have Caitlin Cross. If you guys do not know this girl, you have got to get to know her. She is something else. I love hanging out with her. We just have a blast. We can laugh and be goofy, but she is so legit. Like, she knows her stuff. We talk about VR and it's like way over my head. I have no idea what she's talking about. She's super amazingly geeky in this field, but just so practical and awesome at the same time. So I'm so glad to see Caitlin here. And what she said is loving this live VR time together. And she said she was quoting Rochelle, which was awesome. And Caitlin, we'd love to hear your comment, Irby. So feel free to keep it coming, guys. Some of you are responding even on YouTube, which is good. It's just harder for us to send out and respond inside of there. Plus it goes away. Once this is over, I lost it. I have to copy and paste, and that stinks. So would love for you guys to respond on Twitter, please, so that we can keep this forever. And it's easier for us to link things to you as well. It's kind of hard to do that here on YouTube. They're not a big fan. But I see on here we have lots of folks joining in on YouTube, and we have people asking questions about the curriculum guide. Shelly Robinson asking where to find those curriculum guides. I just said I posted some things here on Twitter, and then also the Merge Educator, but I think that might be even a question for you, Jeremy, if you don't mind responding, where they're going to be able to get access to those resources in the future.
Yeah, right now, a lot of that lives on edu.mergevr.com. It's kind of the easy place to find it. If you scroll to the bottom, there's a couple different links down there. And then it's also in our Facebook group. So
awesome. Yeah. That's it. I don't think a lot of people are aware, although you guys have quite a few people. How do they get connected on your Facebook group, by the way?
Good question. I think the easiest way is to go to our Merge VR Facebook page. And then on the side, there's a little discussion tab. You click on it and you can join it's a private group. So just click join and it usually gets approved pretty quickly.
That's awesome. So if you guys didn't hear that, just make sure, like, I don't know, whenever I'm trying to help moderate too, I'm always like, are you really an educator? Like, I'm like critiquing. If there's somebody that's questionable, I let you guys handle that. But it's like, all right, let's see if they're up to par for this Merge Educator group. Okay, if you guys don't mind, I'm going to move to the next question unless you guys are dying to share what the good, the bad. Are you guys dying? Anybody ready to share that right off the bat?
I'm not dying to.
He doesn't want to share the bad. Rochelle?
No, I'm good.
Okay, I'm going to share a bad. I have seen like people that are like Kim that can do incredible things, instructional technologists, become calendar people. They manage, they clean the devices, they manage the calendar, and they literally are the ones that ship it, these big old cases that they spent $10,000 for, and brought them over to campuses, and that's all they do. That's their new job, is the manager of Google Expeditions. That's a bad idea, guys. Bad idea. But then I've seen incredible things. So it's like, you know, I could go on and on about that, but I have to point that out because I think people think that if they buy it, oh, all of a sudden everybody's going to be happy and everybody passes. It doesn't happen. Okay. All right. I'm moving on to the next question. All right. Final thoughts. Share one essential tool to get started. And then I'm going to share some things that we are seeing from our community sharing as well. So make sure you guys are sharing your one essential tool to get started.
I think we've mentioned it many times. It's community. Like the one essential thing that I think would have made or break, you know, kind of make or break you is having a place to go to bounce ideas off, a place to go to see what's new, what's out there, what's expanding, what's going away. Because that's a big deal too. Because, you know, I've had several times where I'm like, you know, is it me that this isn't working for? You know, is it, you know, am I not doing something right? And then I get on Twitter or I get on Facebook groups and they're like, oh no, that's gone now, and you can use this. So you kind of have you know, somebody to bounce ideas off, somebody to get new ideas from. I get ideas all the time from Twitter and YouTube and Facebook, but community has really been what has allowed me to expand and do more, you know, not only in my position and my job, but for kids. So that's probably my one essential tool.
Yeah, that's Kim. Breaks my heart.
She took the good answer.
Oh, I'm sorry. You got to go first.
Oh man, it's a good one. Jeremy, what were you going to say? I mean, I'm just going to throw an idea out there. Does that have to do with merge?
You know, yeah, I mean, getting specific for AR and VR, it's you know, it's relevant here. I would say, I think the Miniverse really is a great asset. Yeah. And so if you go to miniverse.io, it's all highly curated AR, VR experiences. If I step back to the previous question, the good and the bad, you know, I think one thing VR has suffered from in the past is a lot of bad VR experiences. People want to put people in a VR headset and show them a roller coaster. And our vestibular systems can't handle that. Most people can't handle that. And so then they get this bad taste in their mouth for VR and what VR is. And so on the miniverse.io, you know, it's a huge listing of all and categorized listing of all kinds of VR apps for VR headsets, all kinds of headsets. Merge headsets are great if you use them, but you can use any kind you want.
Yeah.
And then there's also a big catalog for AR apps around the Merge Cube and stuff. So all these things are kid appropriate. They're great for the classroom. And I would honestly say, based on, you know, the amount of stuff we've been publishing the last several months, a lot of the VR stuff right now is educational, like highly educational. So I think it's actually a great resource, miniverse.io.
Yeah, I actually recommended that today in our Voxer group to Katie, who's here with us, Katie McNamara, who has been sharing, and she has a great thought. I'm just going to share it real quick. She was saying the bad is when a phone call interrupts AR, VR, and EDU live video. That's absolutely. So you know, I think Miniverse, what it does is gives you information about what you're looking at beyond what you would find in the App Store. But then it's categorized things, like you said, in a way that's really relevant to our kids that maybe can't handle all of the motions and movements. And I think when going back to David's comment about accessibility, I think that's key. These are some of the things that have to be addressed. I think that's spot on. That's a great resource. I wish there was a way to have something like that digital that can be floating around and just kind of like what you guys did with the curriculum. but having something maybe visual so that people have that to share, because they may not come to your site, but having something like that already out there on social media floating around, hyperlinked, some sort of infographic would be fantastic. I don't know.
Yeah.
Again, what if, right?
One thing that we've been talking a lot about, and we're figuring out how to implement now, so I can't give you any exact dates on when it's going to be available, but one of the things we're doing now is we're going to be, if you go onto any page on the Miniverse for any app, it's going to have linked educational content that supports it. So if you go to the Dino Digger app for the Merge Cube, it's going to have all those lesson plans that we're starting to develop now that go along with the app. So I think educators will, they'll be able to use the portal a lot better too, because they're going to be able to see the reviews for the app, the motion ratings, all that, but then also the resources for actually implementing it. So hopefully that will help too.
Oh, that's so powerful. That's really cool. Rochelle, are you ready to share your one essential tool?
They both took mine.
Did they take your video too?
They did. I have been troubleshooting. The weird thing about this is I check to see, like, oh, I'll just pull up a web recorder and see if it'll like trick it into working. And it says my camera is already in use. I'm like, but it's not in use. So I'm not sure. No, I mean, the essential tool, like people might think of a specific tool like technology or something. And I love what Kim said about community. I think that the tool that everybody should start with depends on where they are in terms of comfort and experience with, the theme and topic of AR/VR. So for somebody who has maybe listened in on something like this or been involved in some chats and has an idea of a tool they might like to use, maybe think about like a class that one of those tools might benefit the most. I mean, for me with Merge, the nice thing is when I had a bunch of them, the students, when you talk about fails, like with the first time I tried to make a bigger version of it, it took me I was so proud on a Monday morning. It was like 35 minutes. I'm like, I'm going to do this. And then I thought, well, maybe I'll have my students do this. And so later on in the day, I showed them what I had used to make it. I walked out of the room. I came back and it was like done. I'm like, how did you even do that? So it just depends. But when it comes to tools, I mean, community, having connections, having resources, or a tool like, the computer to get onto Twitter, to ask the questions, like to see what people are using, or to post in the different communities like you have on Facebook or like your website. All of those tools where you even have the list of how teachers can apply certain different technologies into their classroom with the lesson ideas. And I mean, your book too, if somebody's like, oh, I have no idea, I'm teaching geometry, what can I do to show them, like to have them explore and interact with like shapes instead of just looking at it flat on the paper. I think it's the whole kind of spectrum. I just say everything. No, I'm kidding. I'll go with my first answer, what they said.
No, I hear you. Because I never have fails, just so you know, because I did not fail on this Zoom today. Like getting this together was not a fail at all. But, I think that, even still, like you were talking about the book, how rapidly things change. And that's like one of the biggest fears is like, oh my gosh, it's in print. Like, wow, we're reprinting the book now because it's going good. And so we're reprinting and they're like, what kind of things can we replace and change? And it's like, oh yeah, we got to replace this. We got to replace this, like new infographic. I'm going to add some merge cubes in that graphic, So I have like all these different plans of like how to really change, like how this could be relevant for people with the updates. But I feel like there's so many updates. It could feel so overwhelming, but ultimately being great at one thing and just really getting started and loving what you're doing. And when you feel, like you said, at your comfort level going forward, that's really, that's going to be key, is just like taking it as slow and as easy as you need to, but just moving forward for sure. Okay, I'm going to give you guys some comments here and then I think we're going to wrap up. I definitely heard from Irby, and he was talking about some of the people that he's connected to, like Christy Kate, and then John, I'm going to say his last name wrong, Caripo, I think out in California with Q. David T, definitely can't say that last name, but anyway, so he mentioned some cool people there that really he depends on to really connect with in his community. We have Engineering for Kids here joining us. Hello. She wants some lessons, or he or she wants some lessons for CoSpaces EDU. And I think that's what was a huge announcement this summer, with Merge and CoSpaces partnering up and having that, be available on the Cube when somebody can now view it in augmented reality. I think that's just phenomenal. And definitely Caitlin's mentioning community, Manyverse, student empowerment, resources, curiosity, fearlessness, and more. Oh, I like that. Very good stuff. Manyverse people are posting here. If you guys are not, definitely Rebecca, so glad to have you here. And she said that's fantastic news, by the way, Jeremy, for us as educators. And so we're just seeing Michael Drezick in here, people just collaborating and sharing, but it just goes back to the fact of community, that one person's ideas is just not enough. You really need to have the people to support you in this growth. And I just absolutely love how crazy and wild this community is. I mean, we could throw 1,000 cat gifts out and tag Rochelle to it, and she still smiles and still loves it. And you know what? We're going to keep doing that, because that's AR, VR, and EDU, if you ask me. So, all right. So guys, we're going to go ahead and end here, but next month, so every week we have our Twitter chat, right? New tools, new things shared. But next month, we're looking at having a developer panel, and then bringing in some educators to come and chat with them, and really kind of getting the ins and outs. Like, we have Jeremy here sharing the inside scoop to us that he's allowed to tell us. Maybe next week he might leak something that he's not allowed to tell us.
I was gonna say, I wonder what I might get in trouble for something tomorrow.
We got that in writing and on video. So, but yeah, I think hearing this collaboration is important, and having the companies and the developers part of this discussion is important as us having our big wish list. So I'm excited. Twitter, we'll see you guys next week, and we will be back here again with questions and comments by the community next month. And again, thank you, Merge, for being a part of this and sponsoring this event. And I'll be sharing it out. So thank you guys so much, panelists. You guys did an incredible job. Thank you, everybody, attendees, for being on Twitter, and we will catch you guys next week. All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.